Metade, metade.
Hi there, I'm Drix, and in this afternoon I'm going to be talking to Carla, and we're going to be talking about what it feels like to be bilingual, a bit of our personal histories with the English language, and the ideas that we'll have, ride through what being bilingual feels like. Hey Carla.
Hey Drix.
How are you doing?
Just fine. And you?
I'm okay. It's always a bit strange to be in front of cameras,
yeah,
but I think it is
it's
important.
a bit weird, a bit embarrassing, but
It is.
let's do it.
But we're here together.
Yeah, we are.
With people who are watching us, whoever's watching us. So the reason why I called you to this interview is that when we were having our Lavando Palavras in the last edition, we were talking about language and identity. And I was very struck by your story with your dad. You said that when your dad was in hospital, I don't know if this is a very delicate issue and you'd like to avoid it.
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
now I can talk about it. Yeah.
Because I was really touched by that story, that personal story that you had with what happened with your dad. Your dad was in hospital, and you told us that you engaged with the process of understanding that your father was going through the English language, that you were writing down poems, that you were writing on your diary about what you were going through in your own life.
Yes, that's it.
Through the English language. And I find this fascinating because we're a species that processes two languages or more than two languages, but the relationship we have with our second language can be different from the relationship we have with our first language. And it seems that in your case, your second language was helping you out emotionally. Can you tell us a bit more about how you feel?
Yeah, it has always been easier for me to express my feelings in English. So I write my shopping list in English. Yes.
Like when you're going to Zafari,
yes.
Just like, cheese.
Yes. I talk to myself in English, and last year my father was really sick, and he ended up passing away last January. And while taking care of him in hospital and also at home, I would write down my feelings, and I would talk to myself in English by writing down even notes that I should remember about him, about his routine, like how he ate at 9 o'clock, at 10 I gave him medicine, at 12 he wasn't feeling okay, so he didn't eat much. So I had a record, I had a diary, and in hospital one night it was really tough, and I got my cell phone and I started writing as if I was talking to someone who could listen to me and who could give me some support, something like that. And I ended up writing a poem, which later I wrote on my notebook at home, a notebook that I keep since college.
I read your poem.
I have some poems in Portuguese, some poems in English. Yeah.
So you have a very close relationship with words.
Yeah, I do. I love to play with words. I like to write down whatever comes to my mind. I like to collect words from magazines, especially in English, and make collages. I love words.
Would you say that your second language, the English language for you, is a therapeutical aspect of yourself? Like when you activate that part of you, you feel empowered.
Yeah,
you feel,
absolutely.
How do you feel? Do you feel?
I feel better. I feel powerful. I feel happier. English for me is life. I've always loved the English since I was a child. and songs and movies and I still remember the first contact I had with native speakers, and oh my gosh, it was like, I was in heaven. Yes, it was.
When was that, the first contact?
The first contact with native people was in 1997 in London. Yes.
The first time you traveled abroad?
The first time I traveled abroad, it was like a taxi driver. And I was in heaven. Like, it was like song for my for my hearing. You know.
When did you start learning the language? Was it early in childhood?
Yeah, I come from a small town in the countryside, so I didn't have many opportunities to learn English. There weren't English schools like we have today, So whenever there was an opportunity to study English, I would ask my father to pay for the teacher. But
whenever you had the opportunity, there were no teachers around, and then you found a teacher, and that's I have to.
Yeah, and a few English courses that didn't last long, so I started the course and then they closed down. But at school I always enjoyed, and I still talk to my first English teacher. We are still friends,
really?
And I always tell her that she was my inspiration to be an English teacher. Yes.
Really? Do you have the first memory of meeting her, like that first encounter? Was it her, you said?
Yeah, I always loved her classes, and she used to speak English in class, which was not very common long time ago. Yes. But I remember her classes were fun, and we would play games, and she is a very nice person, a very dynamic person, you know, and I really have great memories of my English classes at school. And then I was already an adult when I started really studying, and then after being a student in the place I was studying, I became a teacher. I was invited to teach, and then in university. But I really felt I was able to communicate in English when I traveled abroad for the first time.
Oh, that's what changed you.
Yeah. And then I felt so comfortable.
So, let me see if I understand it. Would you say that you'd always had an interest in the language? You always felt that the language had something to do with who you were somehow. Yeah. And that was fully activated when you were abroad for the first time. Yeah. Then that changed you.
Yes.
Like Carla was not monolingual anymore. There was a bilingual version of yourself. Like this is me. I'm a dual core or something like that.
That's it. And then after I had other opportunities, you know, the more opportunities I had to speak English, to show my bilingual side, my bilingual me, yes, the more I had opportunities, the better I felt, and the more certain I was that I would love to be, to have been born in another country, and you know.
So there was a bit of a conflict there, like, maybe I shouldn't have been born in this country. I felt like that many times, actually.
Yeah, whenever I travel abroad, I don't feel like coming back. Not not because of the country itself, or
I know,
because of the trip,
but because of the language.
But I wish I could speak English from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to bed, you know.
I feel exactly the same way.
Because this is me, you know.
And this is what I expect people to see from this video, actually, from this interview.
Because it's cool. Speaking English is cool, you know.
It is a really nice feeling to be connected with, I don't know, a different way of expressing yourself, of connecting with other people.
And you learn so much from speaking another language, you know. I've worked in an international school with people from all over the world, you know, like more than 16, 17 different nationalities. And that is amazing.
Are you still working there?
No, unfortunately not. But I'm still in contact with many people, many friends I made, you know. And we are in contact through Facebook, through Skype, and email.
So you keep a bilingual routine within yourself and in your social structure as well?
I guess I just speak Portuguese with people who are not able to understand my English. That's why I like to write my personal notes in English, you know. and text friends in English. Even my children. I have 2 sons. They are adults already, but we text in English. And thank God my daughters-in-law, they also speak English, so it's good.
So you talk to each other in English at home sometimes, or all the time, or never?
Whenever possible, if there isn't anybody who wouldn't understand, because that's not polite.
And your children were born here in Brazil?
Yeah. But
So this is to me, this is really fascinating, because I work with bilingual identity. I work with people that are learning to be themselves in the language, basically, and how they deal with this change emotionally, because sometimes they cannot be easy for some people. They can be very difficult. And to hear that there is a family here in Porto Alegre that every now and then is interacting with each other in their second language, even though that when you go outside on the streets, you don't get people talking to each other in English all the time, because we're not very bilingual here in Brazil. That is fascinating as a phenomenon. Do you get me? Because it's fascinating, because you've got someone, a little monkey, as I say, because just thinking of our species as just like another primate. But this primate not only has the ability to communicate using complex language, using this sounds, talking about things which are not here. We can talk about, say, I'd like an avocado pizza, please. I could order that, and you'd have an idea of what I'm talking about, even though an avocado pizza has probably never been imagined before. I don't know. I don't know if I'm being that creative. But we're talking about something that is not here. There's no pizza, there's no avocado, but still there is a feeling that we can see that. And I see that you see the same thing. And this thing has never existed on planet Earth. I find that fascinating. And to say that this family expresses itself in 2 languages, you know, these members of our species are connecting with each other emotionally, mother, son, you know.
And we use the language whenever we want to say something that should not be understood by all the people around. So we have this strategy.
So you run into the English language. Oh, right.
It's our own language.
I'm quite sure it's not your own language, because there are millions, if not billions, of speakers around the world.
But I mean in our private space, you know, let's suppose like an uncle or a cousin, you know, will not understand. So we have this.
And so there is a bit of a kind of, how can I say that? You're forming a social clan. Clan.
Yeah,
this is
kind of.
When we migrate into the English language, when we switch from Portuguese to English, it's like, this is our code.
Yeah, that's it. We have our own
this
code.
Is us here. Let's talk to each other in English, because that person is not going to understand. But I'm sure that it is nothing as in excluding the other person, but it is creating the feeling that you're connected through the language, which is fantastic. I find that fascinating.
Yes, and we do that at work too, because sometimes we need to say something that the little ones should not listen to, or you know, or the cleaning lady, you know, and then we can have this power, I guess. We feel powerful because we can, how can I explain that? We can say something and not write if we don't want other people. Oh no, this is not good.
What? We can cut it out.
Forget about it. Didn't work.
What do you mean?
No, what I just said, I guess I wasn't clear enough. I guess my example was not good.
Right. You were talking about the possibility of code switching, like going to the other code to maybe avoid some trouble, maybe by not having that issue heard by someone who might be affected by that,
something like that.
or maybe to facilitate communication between a team. You work with children.
Children and teenagers. And it's
I don't normally work with children. I work with adults most of my time through English
I love teaching
therapy.
children. They are just wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You sit and play with them in English, and it doesn't matter if they're understanding you or not. They will respond. At a certain time it will come, and they learn so fast. Oh my God. I have kids whose parents call me just to go to their place and play in English. Like I teach, but some of them will just sit down and play, in English, and it's awesome. We spend like 1 hour playing in English, using their toys and.
And do you have a close relationship with children regardless of the language? Or do you feel even more inclined to dealing with children when you're
even more, because I'm just in love with kids, I've always been crazy about kids. And kids and English, so that's heaven for me.
It's like chocolate and
yes,
ice cream
it's like
together.
chocolate. Yes, that's it. I love kids, and they have their own universe, but it's so easy to get into.
Have you ever had any child that was struggling with the language, and through this more perhaps playful interaction, they came across fine in the end, that they found themselves as in little individuals who spoke the language?
During my time at the international school, I had kids from all over the world, and one that is in a special place in my heart is a little boy from Israel. So he came here, he was 6 years old, and he didn't know any English or any Portuguese, of course. And
so he was learning 2 languages at the same time?
Yeah, and it was tough for him. He was the big brother with 6, and the other boy was 4. So he had such a responsibility to support his little brother and live everything new, a new school, a new country, new culture. And then I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? I was supposed to teach him English and Portuguese and make him feel comfortable at school.
Not at the same time, I hope.
No.
First English, then Portuguese, or first Portuguese, then English. My God, what a mess.
Moments, but then I just thought of that little boy, poor him. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to find a nice way, to do that. And it worked. We were so linked, there was such a positive bond, and everything worked. But of course I had to forget for a moment that I was the teacher and he was the student, and I just saw him as a child and me maybe as a mom or a grandma. And then everything just worked just fine. Yes.
What I see through English therapy is that most of the progress someone makes in their ability to express themselves comes when they can see that they have a friend in the language, when they see that they can connect to someone and they can relate to someone. We can relate to someone emotionally, and that makes a lot of sense, because when you're learning a language when you are a child, right, your first language, you're learning the language in a social structure that is nourishing you normally, right, through your family. Your mom, your dad, you have social bonds with the people, your caregivers, right? The people that are looking after you. And then most of the time I work with adults that they're learning the language as adults. So they're struggling to go beyond the English therapist or the person that is sitting there helping them with the language and seeing the human being. But when they find the human being and they can connect, that kind of unleashes or releases their ability to be themselves in the language. And then language structures itself through time.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I find that very meaningful when you tell me that you had this emotional connection with this child this Israeli kid
Yes.
that enabled him to learn Portuguese, a language that he uses every day in his social interactions here in Brazil, as well as English, a language that is not immediately at his contact all the time, but still I find that beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful. We had a great time together, and when they left, you know, it was hard for me. But talking, now that you were talking about adults, you know, how difficult it is for them to start learning a language at a certain age, I remember my father again, because I used to be his teacher.
All right.
Yes. When I started
so
teaching.
that poem had a lot to convey, right? Because it was standing as a link, artistic link between you and your father, and you're saying that you and your father had a relationship in the language as well whilst you were teaching him.
I was his first and only teacher, and he started for a few years, and then he stopped because I moved, you know, because I come from a small city, as I told you before, and after a certain level there was like a graduation, you know, and I was the MC okay, in that ceremony, and I remember inspiration just came, you know, at the moment I was going to call him to receive the diploma, the certificate of concluding the level, and
what did you
I
study,
said
Carla?
Languages.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yes. And I remember I told him, when I called him up to the stage to get his certificate, I said, to the man who taught me my first words in Portuguese and to whom I had the pleasure to teach the first words in English, I gave the certificate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Everybody remembers that when we talk about
Powerful.
him and his love for English. Because he was a very simple man. He never had the opportunity to study, to go to college. And English was kind of out of this world for him, you know, when he was a child or a teenager. So when I was a teacher, I guess he saw an opportunity to learn a little bit, you know, because, oh, she's my daughter, so she can teach me. Yes, and then he enrolled in the English
And he
course.
looked up to you,
Yeah,
like
he
my
did.
daughter reached farther than I have, and now she's helping me.
And he used to send me messages in English also. And when he called, he always said, oh, hello daughter, how are you? And his English was very limited, but he would always use whenever possible, you know. And out of the blue, he would say a sentence in English and say, is it correct? So, yeah, just memories.
So, the richness of these memories come from the social, from the social in general, but from the human connections you had with these people.
Yeah.
Very close connection with your father, very close connection with that Israeli kid, and so on, with the people that you work with. And that's exactly what I find. And this is one of the reasons why we hold Lavando Palavras, so that we can promote a bilingual culture in town, so that people can understand a bit better what it feels like to be bilingual, this journey that changes your life, and allow themselves to connect to other people in their second language, which can be a very, very challenging thing to do for someone who doesn't live in an English speaking country.
Yes, it is very challenging, and some people just they are so afraid of trying, you know, of accepting this challenge, that they believe they can't. But once they try, it comes, you know. So don't be afraid. Learn English.
Don't be afraid.
Yes.
Trust yourself.
Yeah, trust
yourself. Allow yourself the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because if you don't allow yourself to make mistakes, if you don't allow yourself to, to be there wholeheartedly, then then you're not going to experience what beauty it is to be yourself in a different culture, to be yourself through the sounds of a different culture. Of course, you're still living here. You're still living in this country, which is a beautiful country.
Yes, it is.
And we still have our mother language, which is beautiful as well. But the opportunity of being yourself through different sounds, different words, with different connections that you can establish through these languages, the different art, it is a language art to be bilingual. And I find that very, very thrilling as an experience, a beautiful experience.
Yeah. I can say I am a happier person when I speak English.
So am I. So am I. More confident. I think I'm even funnier when I speak English.
I guess I am too. I feel the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess this is it. We cannot hold this conversation forever, but I wish we could, right? I'd like to thank you very much for coming here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And we'll see each other around town. Yes, having some
on
coffee in English on the 31st as well at Love of the Palavras,
Yeah.
at the Cheese and Wine or the Immersions. And if you'd like to talk to Carla, get in touch with us, and then we'll forward her contact details to you as well. And that's it. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Where do I belong? Well, I suppose there is a place I should go.